Brawn GP is one of the big success stories of Formula 1 that will likely go down as its greatest ever one-hit wonder. A team which only the season before had been a consistent midfielder and jumped into 2009 as the clear leader of the pack. Went on to win not only the Constructors' Championship but the Drivers' Championship, as well as Jenson Button won his first and only title. This is the incredible story of Brawn GP. Brawn GP had its origins in the Tyrrell Racing Organisation, a motorsport team founded in 1958 that competed in various single-seater championships and entered Formula 1 in 1968. Tyrrell Racing won the Constructors' Championship and 3 Drivers' Championships during the 70s. The team continued to race in F1 until 1998 when they were sold to the British American Tobacco Company. British American Racing was set up in a new factory in Brackley, and the team competed for 6 years with a high point of finishing second in the championship in 2004. Honda, BAR's engine partner, acquired full control of the team at the end of 2005, and the team was renamed Honda Racing Formula 1, which, like a lot of manufacturers in the 2000s, didn't work out as planned for the Japanese organization. And this led to Ross Brawn, the former technical director of Honda Racing F1, Ferrari and Benetton teams, buying the Honda team for £1, which would be an amazing deal. I imagine Andretti would take that in a heartbeat. The team was renamed Brawn GP and considered to be an entirely new entry by the FIA. Brawn GP was originally going to be named Pure Racing, but the name was blocked by engine supplier Mercedes. After this was dealt with, the team was then officially powered by Mercedes-Benz engines, the engines that had won Lewis Hamilton his title only a year prior. And the driver lineup was Jenson Button and Rubens Barrichello. Brawn GP was given the final slot in the pit lane as they were technically an entirely new team, which luckily for Force India moved them one slot up. Good for you, VJ. Brawn GP was assigned numbers 22 and 23, with 18 and 19 not assigned to anyone. Again, technically a new team. You get the point. I think we can leave it at that. But the reason I bring it up is because technically, they won the championship in their first year. Andretti? The 2009 contender became known as the BGP 001. Although the car was originally designed as the Honda RA109, this was an essential brand new car which had begun development very early for 2009's regulation changes, and given that Honda had massively poor performance in 2008 anyway, Brawn decided it would be best to start early on this and work towards the 2009 season, which, as we're aware, paid off. After Honda's withdrawal, the car was used by the newly formed Brawn GP and modified to accommodate the Mercedes-Benz engine. And it was given its first test at the Circuit de Catalunya on March 9th, 2009 and performed extremely well. At the first race, an official complaint was launched against the rear diffusers of the Brawn GP 001, but as we now know famously was crucially kept legal. The car received its first upgrades in Spain, which were mainly to do with the different cooling requirements of the Mercedes engine. The 2009 race kicked off at the Australian Grand Prix, and Brawn GP finished off strongly in Friday practice, finishing in the top 5. In qualifying though, they finished even stronger, as Jenson Button took pole at the Australian Grand Prix, with teammate Rubens Barrichello coming second, followed by Red Bull's Sebastian Vettel. I wonder how he went on to do. Button won the first Australian Grand Prix, leading from start to finish, with Barrichello coming in second, giving Brawn GP a 1-2 finish on their debut. And Button went on to win the rain-shortened Malaysian Grand Prix from pole, picking up the fastest lap. Brawn GP become the only new constructor to win their first 2 races since Alfa Romeo did so at the very first season back in 1950. At the Chinese Grand Prix, Barrichello qualified in front of Button for the first time that season, but in the rain, Button finished 3rd and Barrichello finished 4th. Button won the Bahrain Grand Prix from 4th on the grid, with Barrichello finishing in 5th. Brawn achieved their second 1-2 of the season at the Spanish Grand Prix, with Button leading home from Barrichello. And Brawn went on to get another 1-2 at the Monaco Grand Prix, with Button leading from pole. But then things got much more difficult for the team as Red Bull began to catch up, in a similar way to how it's becoming much more difficult for me to come up with ways to get people to subscribe that are funny, not annoying. Let's move on. At the Turkish Grand Prix, the Brawns were beaten to pole by Vettel and struggled with pace throughout the race. Again, at the British Grand Prix, both drivers struggled at the team's home race. And in the German Grand Prix, the team suffered the same fate as in Britain, as both drivers suffered with tyre temperature. At the Hungarian Grand Prix, Brawn GP suffered their worst qualifying of the season, with Button in 8th and Barrichello in 13th. And Barrichello's rear suspension would go on to fail, striking Ferrari's Felipe Massa on the helmet, resulting in serious head injuries. Button too was affected by this, as his car spent most of Q3 being checked to make sure that some components would not fail and end up with much more fuel in qualifying than planned. In the race, neither driver showed much pace, but Button managed to pass Trulli through the final pit stops and finish 7th, with Barrichello in 10th closely behind. At the Belgian Grand Prix, Button had a dismal showing and was taken out by Romain Grosjean on the first lap, while Barrichello had a clutch issue at the start and managed to work his way up to 7th, but his car engine burst into flames as he entered the pits. At the Italian Grand Prix, both Brawns managed to make it past the heavily fueled Kovalainen in the opening laps, and both kept up their pace to complete their final 1-2 of the season. Barrichello in 1st and Button in 2nd. At the Singapore Grand Prix, both drivers suffered qualifying problems once again, with Button failing to make it into the 3rd session. At the Japanese Grand Prix, Brawn had the opportunity to clinch the 2009 Constructors' Championship, but finished 6th and 10th. At the Brazilian Grand Prix, though, Button did clinch the Drivers' Championship by finishing 5th, with Barrichello finishing in 8th place, which meant that Brawn in the Brazilian Grand Prix took both titles that season. An incredible feat. At the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, the final race of the season, they took home 3rd and 4th, with Button being the world champion and Barrichello 3rd in a championship. The team won the 2010 Laureus World Sports Award for Team of the Year as a result of this ridiculous success. All of this meant that the team had a 47% win rate in its debut season, and is the only team in Formula 1 history to have a 100% success rate in winning world titles. Something that we let's be honest, we won't see again. On November 16, 2009, it was announced that Daimler AG and Abar Investments had purchased 75.1% stake of Brawn GP. Daimler's stake was 45% and Abar's 30%. The partnership paid $110 million for this 75% stake. Hear that, Andretti? It just gets worse. It just gets worse. The team would be rebranded as Mercedes GP for 2010. The remaining 24.9% stake was between Brawn's partnership with Nick Fry. And the team used the Brawn GP base in Brackley for its operation, with Brawn staying as team principal until the end of the 2013 season, when Toto Wolff took up those reins for 2014. And there's one even more just bonkers fact about this season. This is a team that was strapped for money in its debut season, and because of that, Jenson Button used the exact same chassis for the entirety of the season. His chassis was the BGP 001-02 and is considered one of the most successful chassis in F1 history. Ross Brawn retained ownership of this chassis and still, as far as I'm aware, keeps it to this day, with the 001-01, the first ever chassis built, given to Jenson Button under contract. But if you wanted to see one of these fine chassis yourself, luckily the BGP 001-03 is retained by Mercedes, and as far as I'm aware is on show somewhere at Brackley. It was an incredible season to watch, and also for me, as at the time a Vettel fan, a great one that would go on to show what was about to happen as Vettel went to kill it in the championship. The only thing I think that's more exciting than Brawn GP's titanic rise to success is my titanic whining about my subscriber count. Thanks for watching.